What is a superbill? How do you use a superbill in your private practice as a dietitian to market to other referring providers? And how do you make this seamless for the patient in order for them to get reimbursed for your services? My name is Sheena, and I'm a dietitian that has been in private practice for the last decade. And I help other dietitians to grow and scale a successful one to one dietitian private practice as well as contract with insurance. So let's dig into it. What is a superbill and how can you use it? Superbills are essentially the easiest way for you to make yourself and your services marketable as a dietitian to both clients and referring providers. Anyone can create a super bill. You don't need to be contracted with insurance companies to create a super bill. So what is a super bill? Essentially, a super bill is a explanation of the services that you provided to a patient that patient can then later on go to provide to their insurance company to potentially get reimbursed for your services. Many insurance companies offer out of network services. So even if you're not contracted with a person's insurance company, they may still be able to receive your care through their insurance. I love super bills because any dietitian can offer them, and here's how. So the first thing that you are going to need if you're going to provide super bills and advertise this as a service that you can give to patients is you are going to need an NPI number. So, an NPI number is your National Provider Identification Number. If you need to get one, just go ahead and Google NPI number and you'll get one for free online in a matter of minutes. And I do encourage that every dietitian get an NPI number because it does show insurance companies services as dietitian are something that is being rendered to patients and that we are valuable providers. So, just a note on that. If you don't have an NPI number, get one, even if you don't ever plan on taking insurance or providing your clients with super bills. However, I don't understand why anyone would not provide a client with super bills. They literally take a couple of seconds. You can easily send it off to a client, or you can offer your services to actually submit that super bill on the patient's behalf to an insurance company, therefore eliminating friction further for that patient coming to your office. So, what is going to go on a Super Bowl? I've provided you with an example here of all the things that you're going to need on your Super Bill. So things like the address of your office, the name of your office, the rendering provider's name, and so on and so forth. You can see this illustrated in the example here. You're also going to need the patient's information. So things like the patient's name, the patient's date of birth, the patient's date of service, and the patient's address. A couple other things that you're going to need on that super bill include your EIN number or your employee identification number. You can also use your social security number if that's what you use for your business to identify that business, but I highly encourage everyone to have an EIN. This is really outside the scope of the conversation today. Definitely EIN on that super bill is what's necessary. So you're going to include what is called a CPT code. So what this is the actual service that you provided to the patient. And for the most part, dietitians really only use two codes for CPT codes. So they are 97802, which means you had an initial consult with that patient. It is the first time that you've ever seen that patient. And you're always going to use that code if it's the first time that you've seen the patient. The other code that you're going to potentially use is going to be 97803, which means this is a follow-up consult with that patient. Those really are the two main ones that you're going to use unless you're using a group code. And we're not going to delve into that here, but if you are using that, that could be another CPT code that you use. The next thing that you're going to need on your super bill is going to be your diagnosis code. What a diagnosis code is what clinical condition did you see that patient for? Now, when it comes to super bills, I really encourage you to include all the potential diagnosis codes that you could have seen a patient for. So, for example, I work with eating disorders. So, if a doctor has referred a patient to me for eating disorders, whether I'm contracted with an insurance company or not, I really want to include the eating disorder code on the super bill. Now, there is going to be a few reasons for this. Company might be more likely to reimburse that patient for a service for out of network care if you're a specialist in that area. Maybe there's not a lot of other specialists in the area. So, for example, in my area, I am the only eating disorder specialist. So, if someone wanted to see me for eating disorder care, their only other option to get with an in network provider would be to travel over 100 miles. So sometimes that can really be a factor in whether or not an insurance company reimburses that patient for care. Now, when it comes to providing super bills, you always want to charge the patient upfront because there's no guarantee that the service that you provided is actually going to be covered because you are not an in network provider with that insurance company. So go ahead and collect the payment upfront and know on the super bill that that patient has made a payment to you. At that point, it's all a matter of how you and the patient determine you're going to submit that super bill. So like I said, you can offer to do this on the patient's behalf. And a lot of times this can be an incentive for that patient to work with you and further for referring providers to refer patients to you. I hope that this information was helpful. If you found it helpful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend. If you do have any questions, please drop those questions in the comments below because I'm sure others do share some of the questions that you have.